And we are not live for
Not
episode
live.
not live 164 of Trek Live. Scheduling stuff in April is going to be kind of tough, so in order to bring everybody content and to keep us rolling, we are pre-recording this episode of Trek Live. So, how you doing tonight, Dan?
Doing all right. It's not our favorite thing. We do like to have you guys join the discussion, but it will also, it's a double-edged sword because you also get Star Trek content as well. So
Yeah,
we will miss you that weekend, but also you get content. So I'm excited to talk about this especially. So
absolutely. We're going to skip the rewatch recap because tonight's episode, or this week's episode, is pretty much a big, long rewatch recap for Dan. And I think, to give a little sneak preview, I have a feeling that I may be live by myself next week to do a little rewatch recap. I expect to probably be, hopefully, done season 1 of Voyager and season 3 of Deep Space Nine by the time that weekend hits. So I'll do a little solo because you're not going to be available. Just my thoughts and kind of sum up those seasons, just to deliver some live content and hopefully chat with some folks. So, what do you got?
Just before we start, Bill's actually doing all the producer-y stuff, so I just want to give a shout out to him because it makes my job a little bit easier. So
especially this week with looking at your rewatch and your sort of feedback and response to Deep Space Nine season 4. This is going to be one of our see it, skip it, thumbs up, thumbs down sort of sum ups of your experience with a season of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This is season 4. So before we get into it, just as a reminder, in case there's somebody watching this for the first time that hasn't seen our season 1, 2, and 3 similar conversation, how do you decide? Because it's not just as simple as, if I'm remembering correctly myself, it's not just as simple as, hey, is the episode good or the episode bad? There's a little more thought that goes into it on your part. So talk a little bit about your criteria for what sort of edges an episode into yes territory or no territory, the way you're thinking about it for this.
It's essential viewing in the aspect of, is it pivotal to a character or the story or the show? So there will be some episodes in this season and in prior seasons where you look at it and go, that's a stinker to me. But there might be something, a little moment, a little storyline, a B plot or an A plot that is pivotal for character, the story, or the show. So that's how I kind of I think the example that I use is Storyteller.
I was just about to say that.
Was a see it for me because it's pivotal for the Bashir O'Brien kind of bromance, where they came from, how it started.
Yeah.
Literally started from rock bottom and went all the way up. So, so if you see one of those type of episodes in this episode that we're recording, that's why it's a and vice versa, it's skip it. So if I don't think it's essential, if I don't think it's essential viewing, it's a skip it for me. So
okay, so episodes that are well produced, well done, like on the merits, but that kind of feel empty to you and don't feel like they're like incredibly important to the overall dynamic might edge into skip it territory, and an episode that you don't even really enjoy that much might be a see it because it adds a degree of character development or moves the story for the grander story arcs forward in a way that's important.
But I do want to preface that this is my list and this is my opinion, so I would love to see your guys' see it, skip it list. I would love to be proven wrong as well. Say, hey Dan, this is not, I don't agree with this pick, this is why, reasons why. Definitely I love to be proven wrong. So
yeah, it's just it's a conversation starter is really all it is.
Exactly.
It's a way to talk about these episodes in a way that's unique. And the other thing we do with this is we don't just go chronologically. We don't just start at The Way of the Warrior and end at Broken Link. I'm going to put a board up of episode, like basically an episode listing, and I'm just going to kind of bounce around and ask Dan his thoughts on each episode along the way, and we'll put up a see it, skip it next to each episode title until we're all the way through it. So we'll talk a little bit about all the episodes, some might go down longer rabbit holes than others. Some might be real quick in and out. Some we might talk about a little bit more. Some I'm really eager to talk about. Some I think I already know, or we've maybe already covered a good bit on the show in our traditional rewatch recaps. So we'll bounce around and kind of just see where the conversation goes from here. So if you're ready, and I think we're through like the intro stuff, I'm going to put the episode listing up now.
Let's do it.
And we will get rolling with looking at these episodes one at a time.
Yep. Season as a whole, kind of overview before we get into it real quick.
Yeah.
Very consistent season. This is typical Deep Space Nine, where a run of episodes, they don't have part 1 and part 2, but they are connected, have connective tissue, as Bill puts it. So very consistent. Strong season for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is high point Deep Space Nine. You know, this is at the point where Deep Space Nine's kind of hit its zenith and hitting really consistent runs, and the bigger story arcs are really, coming together. This is the meat and potatoes of Deep Space Nine. So
yeah,
a successful season. I would suspect that we're going to come away with this at the end of the day. I'm thinking that's going to be the takeaway. So I'm curious right off the bat. You and I have talked about it off air. We've actually talked about it on Trek Live a good bit as a kind of controversial episode.
Starting right away.
It's the one I'm the most in. This is how we're doing it.
Right in. Okay.
This is going to be driven by partially all the takes are going to be yours as far as like the quality of the episodes and how you feel about them. But I'm going to drive where we go. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on The Quickening, because I have no idea. I know you watched it just a few days ago from the time we recorded this, and we haven't talked about your feelings on it. What were your takeaways on The Quickening as a hot rod episode?
Just a preface, if you guys haven't been around, if you guys are new here, we had a very, not heated discussion, but a polar opposite discussion with Jim with Trek Ranks on for episode 50, I think.
Yeah.
It is a see it for me. It was tough. Pivotal episode for the Bashir character. I think at the beginning, he kind of talks about how he wanted to be on the edge of pushing the boundary of medicine and exploring and all these things. And this, we get an opportunity to actually see that. Other side of the coin, it's not an easy watch. It is definitely not a Saturday night, hey, I'll just casually pop this in. Which there's another episode on this list. It's probably the same type of episode. But this is definitely really a gut punch. It really goes very, very dark, very dark. Plays with some dark themes. Definitely a tough watch. I think it's pivotal for the Bashir character, and it's a see it for me.
Yeah, I mean, Bashir is a character who, right from the beginning, is kind of battling his own kind of arrogance and his overconfidence and his greenness. Like all these factors are big parts of his character and things that have rubbed people the wrong way, especially early on when you first meet him. Some of his colleagues on station think he's arrogant and full of himself. And I think those kinds of mentalities kind of come back to haunt him here, I think, and he has to confront his own awareness of those qualities. So I like it on those grounds. I like the dramatic heft of it, but I totally get it's very much a tough sit. It's not an easy, relaxing episode. And on that episode 50, I advocated for it. I thought it was really good. I've always thought it was really good. Jim Morehouse from Trek Ranks is not a huge fan, and if you want to hear our kind of back and forth, check out episode 50.
But it's a great simple setup though. It's a simple Star Trek setup. Like how many times have we seen they respond to a distress call and they solve the problem of the week at the end of the episode. But the beauty of this episode is it fails big time.
Yeah.
Does tie it up kind of but it's not one of those things where it's like, okay, it's complete.
It's not tidy.
Fine. Yeah, no, it's you. This is a type of episode that you'll think back on, and it'll stick with you. So, I think it's a see it. So.
Yeah, I talk a lot about episodes that kind of leave the crew kind of walking away, hat in hand, head down a little bit. I think going back to TOS, that was a quality that they would kind of return to. Episodes like Charlie X, like all the way back as early as that, where episodes kind of end on a sour note, where the crew doesn't feel good about where things are left. And this is, I think, an episode in that camp. And I tend to like those episodes. I like things not getting laughed out to the credits, too often. And
that element of realism, because I think in life, that's the same thing.
And you're right about it's a pretty steady premise in Star Trek. Like, how many episodes of Star Trek across all these shows do you come across a virus of the week, something that has to get cured?
Yeah.
And this one is a virus that not only isn't totally really cured at the end of the episode, like Bashir finds a vaccine for it and there's some hope for the future, but it's certainly not resolved. But this is a virus that like ravaged the culture, and you're seeing what the consequences of that are, and it's tied into the Dominion, and some of the bigger picture Deep Space Nine stuff is getting explored here too. So I'm a fan. I'm glad you took some things away from it. I'm not surprised to hear you say it's not an easy watch, because it's not. That's just the fact. It's not a pleasant experience, and I think that drives the polarization of the episode a lot. That it's so dark and grim.
I guess maybe we should do that whole episode on this.
I'd be down.
I got a lot of thoughts, but yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah. I'm also eager to hear your thoughts on. Let's get the big sort of unofficial two-parter out of the way with Homefront and Paradise Lost, like right in the middle of the season. That's the Earthbound Sisko.
Yeah.
Dad, Joseph Sisko, and Changelings on Earth wreaking havoc. Where do you sit on those two? Pretty well.
I both see it. Yeah, you have to. Can't see one without the other. Big, grand. It feels really big. It's a big, a political statement kind of type of episode. Yeah. We get to go back. There's some great backstory stuff with Sisko's dad and everything. I think it has everything. It's got like this great story, great political message, but there's also some great backstory. It feels like everyone has a lot to do in it. Jake has some good stuff in it.
Yeah.
Just a great fun Sisko, not fun, but a great Sisko family outing, I should say.
Yeah, I feel like, like any Star Trek episode, it could really be. This could have worked on its own, just as like a political allegory, a big picture universe kind of altering story about changelings on Earth, or it could have worked really well as like a Sisko family drama. And the thing that makes it kind of great is that it does both pretty easily, and it.
Yeah.
Both those things kind of capitalize on each other and play off each other well. It's a classic case of like A and B plots fitting together seamlessly and taking advantage of each other. Let's get a skip it that I'm pretty sure is going to be here off the board. Where do you stand on the Muse, which we talked a little bit about last week?
The Muse is in the firm camp of skip it, and probably in the bottom barrel of Deep Space Nine as a whole. I think it was a tough hour to get through. Not in the way that the quickening was. It was.
You almost needed to take a week off Deep Space Nine because of it, I think.
Yeah, I took a couple days off just because the way that I try to do 3 episodes a week, so it was like after Hard Time, and then the next 3 episodes I knew were what was coming, so I was like, oh, man, I just had this tough watch with Hard Time, and then now I'm coming into a rough patch. So yeah, the Muse is utterly pointless stuff in the field, out of character. I'm not going to be too harsh. It's that's all I'll say. I have to skip it. Don't need to watch it.
It's a misfire for sure. It's hard to argue with that. I think if they're I'm sure
rare misfire.
There are people out there who like it. I think Cyber Honey, who's often a participant in our chats, might even be a fan of it. But not the most common take, I would say. What about? Let's go to a lighter fare. Let's go to Little Green Men, the time travel romp with the Ferengi.
I really love this episode because it's one of those. It's a see it for me.
Okay.
Because it's one of those very few episodes where I would say I could confidently say like, hey, this is a comedy episode, right? It's got some sci-fi flavors to it with um, traveling back in time, getting off the station, doing a bunch of stuff with some smuggling and some
Yeah.
fun things like that. But it really, to me, it's a really good comedy, and I think it's just great. It's really fun. It's really fun. I love it.
I do too. It's one of my favorite Star Trek comedies. I think it's a high point for the Ferengi, like stories that really focus on not just Quark but the Ferengi family. That's a certainly almost like a sub series within Deep Space Nine. It's one of those things that you chart all the way through it. And there's a few episodes a season that really go into that and give those characters a lot of room to breathe. And I think there's some mixed results in that pool of episodes. But I think it might be my favorite of all of them. That would fit into that like sub series of Deep Space Nine. And actually, I think I did this last time, and I think this is a natural place to kind of start with this. Let's kind of keep on that track and look at bar association, like maybe the next step along that road of looking at Quark and the other Ferengi, with a lot of Ferengi action, so to speak. Yeah.
It is. This was one of those tough picks.
Yeah.
It is a see it for me.
Okay.
Man, I could go both ways here, but I think there's some good ROM stuff. I think.
Yeah.
And some Ferengi kind of backstory stuff that I think that is important. I think we get just some good Ferengi backstory stuff that hey, they don't tolerate these coups or these picketing, whatever. But I think one of my favorite aspects of this episode is it feels so simple, like it's just really homey. We're on the station, we're dealing with some stuff on the station.
Yeah.
And I think people forget there's so much going on outside. And again, this is my kind of maybe a point I'm trying to make about other episodes, but there's so much going on outside. It's fun to kind of have this like simple little on the station setup episode where because it's people forget it's a busy space station, so we're gonna have these type of things on the station. So I like that we get to see some more simple stuff just on the station.
Yeah, for the Starfleet crew, like Cisco and company, it's a completely stressless situation. Like there's no crisis, there's no reason to get worked up. It's just like this. There's a thing going on down at Quark's, like a labor battle, and that's it. Like it's very casual and very low stakes, and that's kind of nice, especially in Deep Space Nine when they can do that because
when if you think
episodes like
about
the Quickening and Hard Time where it's not quite so light.
Yeah, but if you think about it, what's going on outside? There's 3 potential war fronts.
Yeah.
Right. We got the Klingon stuff. We got the Dominion stuff, and we got the Badland stuff with all the Maquis. So there's so much going on outside. I like. And we got this simple strike going on.
But it is Star Trek. Like it doesn't, because the Ferengi allows for these kinds of issues to get talked about, and the Federation is so beyond those issues. Like it is an episode of Star Trek that talks about labor rights and workers' rights and unionization and forms of economies and things like that are all kind of on display here, where you don't get a lot of that in other episodes just because of the nature of where the Federation kind of sits on that spectrum. And then I guess the last big Quark episode, unless I'm missing one here, would be Body Parts, which I have no idea what you thought of because you just recently watched it and we haven't talked since. So I'm curious, where does Body Parts sit for you?
It is a see it. People are like, man, I'm getting tired of the Ferengi, but here's why it's a see it. I'm terrible with episode names, but Quark in the previous season he goes back to Ferenginar and he's so by the book. He's so against his mother, just like playing outside the lines of Ferengi, all the rules of acquisition and things like that. And he's so against that. And then this is him like there's a character arc. He's like just and there's a feel good moment at the end.
I love
with all the crew and everyone on the station pretending that there's like this some phantom renovation and they need storage. In typical Quark fashion, he answers with, "Well, there'll be a small storage fee." So I love that feel good moment at the end, but I think this is pivotal for Quark's character development from earlier seasons where he was so against his mom, just completely never wanted nothing to do with her. Now, like he's kind of his own rebellion in his own way. So
yeah, it pushes him to a vulnerable place where he has to challenge his own, hardline, traditional Ferengi values. It's. I agree. I think I hadn't thought of it as like an extension of family. I think it's Family Business. I think it's called from season 3, where he goes back to Ferenginar and he's got all the stuff with his mom and she's doing stuff she shouldn't be doing, earning money, investing, and his very traditional conservative views are kind of on display. And like you said here, all those values are sort of tested.
And in Body Parts we get Brunt as well. Anytime, I think it's Jeffrey. I think it's Jeffrey Combs. Anytime Jeffrey Combs, but she's got a lot of action in the season. But anytime Jeffrey Combs is on set, it's a lot of. So.
Absolutely, I agree. Let's maybe the easiest transition there is to go to the Death, because that's the introduction of Wei Yun with a very action heavy Jem'Hadar Starfleet joint venture kind of a story, kind of a balls to the wall action adventure tale. Another one that we haven't talked about these last handful. I really don't know, so I'm glad to be knocking them out. What do you think about that?
It's a see it.
You sound unenthused.
It's there's some points in it where it's like it suffers from the Into Darkness syndrome, where it's just insert action scene here.
Oh, okay.
I do like the there's a deep cut reference to some Star Trek, I don't know, into the Star Trek universe of with the Archway can do and things like that. I do like that. And I also like that the perspective, they're playing with the perspective of the Dominion.
Yeah.
And that both, like, you could see Cisco having to weigh his options, like, well, I mean, I don't want to help the Dominion here, but if I don't, then it's kind of bad. It's like it's a great weighing options kind of dilemma.
Yeah.
But it's also like the perspective of the Dominion has always been this big bad wolf just outside the door, right? But in another episode that maybe we'll talk about this, but they just play with the perspective. Okay, they're not actually going to war right away. Like there's some common ground that we can find here. So it kind of leads into another episode. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's I certainly like the way that it sort of forces Cisco to sort of weigh the benefit of helping in this situation. Like, is it better to try to make amends and maybe start a path toward helping in peace, or do you kind of just watch the house burn and not? But he's put in a tough spot. I mean, the teaser of that episode I think is really strong, where they show it back at the station and the upper pylon's blown off and they beam onto the station. There's people hurt everywhere. I think Avery Brooks is really strong. Yeah. I think Alex Perry, it might have been Alex Perry, was tweeting in the last week or so about that episode starting off really well. A good teaser, and I would agree with that. I think it starts off with a bang, and it does get cred for the Wei Yun intro. Was kind of putting him on the map. Let's look at where can we go from here?
Let's go. Yeah, I don't know.
Go ahead. Yeah, where do you want to go?
No, there's a tie-in to Broken Link, but I think I'll save my if. We can go to Broken Link.
Let's go to Broken Link. Let's knock it out. Let's just let the segues just kind of carry us.
Yeah, so I talked about talking about Jid the Death. I talked about the perspective of the Dominion. In the early parts of the episode, you feel like they're gonna it's everything's gonna be okay. They're gonna save, especially with the changeling that comes on and talks to Odo. But there's a point in this episode where I'm like, where the main changeling flips a switch. And I'm glad that it's cool when I was like, why is Garrick on this mission like this? But that moment, between that exchange between Garrick and the main changeling, where she was like, "No, there's no survivor," and then she was just went on this just ramp. It just was like, okay, yeah, they're dangerous because it was up to then. I was like, oh, they're helping all this with all the stuff with Odo and to the death too, and all these things. But sorry, back over.
You're good. Yeah, you're
good. But yeah, it's just that flip of the switch. Where I'm like, oh, that's where the stakes just rose a little bit. And I was wondering. I was like, why is Garrick on here? Is he trying to save his friend from season 4? But man, it flips the switch.
It does.
Really.
So I'm getting that to see it. I'm assuming.
Yes, very much see it. Yep.
Yeah, that might be my favorite moment in that episode is the Garrick attempt to get some information, and then his last ditch effort to. Isn't that the episode where he tries to blow up the planet? Like he tries to.
Yeah.
He tries to hack into the Defiance weapons and gets caught. Yeah, there's some good Garrick stuff there, and the tie into last season with Improbable Cause and Dies Cast, and really really strong stuff.
Because up to that point, the founders specifically, I mean, the Jem'Hadar have always been really aggressive, but the founders have been very docile, very just lightly spoken. But that she flips a switch and she just
yeah, they're not screwing around, and all this danger is coming from them. Like at the end of the day, that's the source of these decisions, and their stance is coming from the founders. Yeah, I think it does establish the seriousness of that threat for sure.
And you get kind of a insight into why are they bloopers later. The why the founders are the way that they are is because I think they're fear of solids. So, and they want to control things. So, definitely get some insight into that. So it's definitely see it. I mean, it's this season finale. You gotta see it. So.
You gotta see it. There's a lot. I think there's a lot brought to the table for Odo's character, for the bigger picture stuff that you're talking about with the way that we view the Dominion and their,
and what a cliffhanger too.
Good cliffhanger. Good twist at the end.
You kind of get. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You kind of get what kind of the motivation, or kind of see what their plan is. They're trying to turn up the heat on their side.
Yep.
And then kind of come in and swoop in. So, like, what a cliffhanger. I can't imagine having to wait all summer to figure out what was going to happen, whenever it finished.
Yeah, it was definitely like a 3-month wait, and it left a lot hanging for sure. And the weird thing about it is, I think back then, I think because by this point there had been such a track record for like season-ending cliffhangers, like part 1, part 2, like I think like Basics had happened by this point. All the TNG ones had happened. Even the Jem'Hadar is not like a part 1, part 2, but that had a pretty strong punch. This one, I think, because of it being so character centric on Odo and what he's dealing with, it feels much more intimate and as like a smaller episode as the finale. But it definitely does low key and quietly throw some heavy weight down with the bigger picture storyline with the Dominion and where it's going from here. So I would agree that it's essential viewing. Kind of continuing on with the Odo stuff, let's double back and look at an episode like Crossfire, which is a very small, intimate character drama that's Odo heavy, big Rene Auberjonois acting showcase. Where do you stand on this?
You just find the ones that I'm on the fence about.
Yeah, they're the ones that draw my interest for sure.
It's a see it.
Okay.
Um, uh, I know. Yeah, I know Odo is there's some good progression with the jealousy and that kind of, because I think that Odo's relationship with Kira is a pivotal, essential viewing anytime that's on screen. So Crossfire is definitely on there, but yeah, it was a tough one for me.
It's a tough sit. It's not the most.
I
Another one. It's
I,
not.
I thought about, yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
No, I think there's a lot of good acting in it, and I think it does add some context to this growing relationship between Kira and Odo. This at least more complicated relationship over time that just continues to evolve and add texture. And uh, I think I always think of the scene where they're stuck in the turbo lift together, and I think Renee Auberjonois' performance of that
So good.
terrible, awkward, nightmarish, like worst possible situation you can find yourself in his situation. To be stuck there is just really really tough, and I think that performance is really strong and has stuck with me. And that's another episode I mentioned earlier. An episode I watched, Heart of Stone, another Deep Space Nine episode that I wasn't fond of as a kid and as a teenager, but really has worked much stronger. Much better on me as an adult, and that's Crossfire is another example of that. A lot of them in Deep Space Nine, I think.
There's some, sorry, just real quick. There's some funny stuff with Quark in it as well. I guess they Odo's neighbors with Quark.
Yes.
He's kind of upset at the noise, and then later on in the episode, there's some really good stuff, I think.
Agreed.
With that dynamic in that relationship, which is, we haven't really seen this side of it, so it's nice to see. Yeah, see that.
Yeah,
so it's a see it. I convinced myself it's a see it.
You're firmly in the see it camp.
Yeah.
Let's look at Worf, the new addition. Maybe talk a little bit about how he integrates into the show. There's some episodes along the way here. Looking at 4 that stand out really strongly to me as like, yeah, these are Worf stories. Obviously, The Way of the Warrior. Let's knock out the premiere.
Let's see it. Got to.
Yeah.
Might be top 10 track, I think.
Wow. Okay.
That's really good. I really like it.
Hard to argue with that. Yeah. I mean, it's a classic, and it's a game changer for the show and for Worf, and that's an easy one. Not a lot to say. We covered it back in the day, and we could do a whole episode on The Way of the Warrior. Let's look at the Sword of Kahless, another episode that I know the answer. I think, because I know you really were fond of it, at least on the merits. Where do you sit at this point with it?
Anytime we can relive anything that makes a Klingon drinking song, like, you can't not see it. You have to see it. The backstory of this, all the Klingon backstory stuff is fantastic. I'm a big Klingon guy, so this is definitely a big for me. I didn't expect the end. I didn't expect that. To send that out into space, but I really like. Yeah, I feel like after I watch that, like, man, I think they're gonna sing songs about this. You know, that's I think of Mark, a good I don't know, story, good Klingon story for sure.
Yeah, I not surprised to hear that. I've always been a little mixed on Sword of Kahless. It's another one though that I've kind of grown to like more as I've grown older. I think the look at like power corrupting, and you know the sort of obsessive drive to get something, what that can do to somebody. The downside of that, I think there's some really good stuff, and I do like the ending a lot as well. More controversial episode that we talked a little bit about a couple of weeks ago, Sons of Moog. Another one with a tough ending, and it's another one that I think you can split. I remember doing grade this episode polls on prior rewatches. I haven't been doing that as much lately, but that was always an episode that you would like see a wide variety of grades from people, everything from an A to an F. Where do you stand on Sons of Moog?
It's a see it only because it's pivotal to the story and the character of those two guys. it's almost like it's the reset button. I'm not a fan of that, which I really like the dynamic of. I may have said this on here before, but I'd love to see a TV show just on Klingon houses and the dramas and things like that. I think that would be fun. But anytime we get to see just backstory of Klingons again, but I don't agree with the decision at the end. Mm-hmm. With Worf's decision and the decision to reset that character, just not a fan of that ending. Just feels too easy, too cheap.
Yeah, I think that's been my sort of hang up with it as well. I've never been a fan of the ending. I always feel like it's a cop out and a uncharacteristic decision. I don't necessarily like the compromise of the values and the sort of sheet. Tough issues explored in that episode. I think there's some good stuff kind of slowly building the Worf Dax stuff.
Oh, in that. Yeah, there's that's early on. Yeah.
It is. It's not quite like apparent. It's not obvious that that's where they're going with it yet, but they're slowly sort of putting those two characters in a situation where you could see it going that way.
Yeah.
I don't know that they were consciously building to that yet, but
because
it makes it easy to chart it.
She was with him in sort of Kalis.
Yep.
And now she was in Sons of Moog. She was like really heavily involved as well. Yeah, they're dropping the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, they are. I think pretty quickly. Dax's comfort with the Klingon stuff makes that an easy dynamic to start with.
Yeah. So.
And then Rules of Engagement's the sort of fourth big Worf episode in the fourth season. I remember, I think it was last week you talked about being pretty fond of it. Do you still stand by that?
It's shout out to A Few Good Men. Any courtroom drama, a big courtroom drama type of guy. There's other TV shows that I like about it, that I like. But yeah, really good guest star in that. I think he kills it. Yeah, just really, really, really good stuff. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I like the rare to see a one of our heroes in a command decision kind of a situation where they screw up and they don't do it perfectly. You know, it's not screwed up to the extent that Klingon advocate is attesting to, and not the case he's making. I think it falls short of that level of incompetence. But as Cisco kind of lets Worf have it at the end, there were mistakes made. And
epic dressing down. If we're talking about top 10 dressing downs, this has got to be in definitely.
Yeah, Cisco lets him have it, and that's refreshing to see. I think it's an important little beat to play in Trek, that it doesn't always go well, and mistakes get made, and lives get lost, and high stakes situations are stressful, and they don't always go perfectly.
But this is just another example, a big, wide example. But there's other examples in the beginning of the season, in kind of the front half, where Worf doesn't really fall in line. He doesn't really fit very well. He steps on Odo's toes. You know, everyone's kind of scared of him on the station. Things like that. He's a kind of, at least in the back half, he's staying on the Defiant. Like he's just, it's not like a seamless transition here, which is so cool to see because I think in Star Trek we don't get to see those types of transitions. So I love that.
Yeah,
that's not a specific episode, but I just want to throw that out there.
Totally agree. I think they do a really nice job this season, especially of slowly easing Worf in and having there be challenges, and that it's not like a totally natural fit right off the bat. And yeah, that's a well achieved aspect of this season. Let's add a skip it. I believe I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong here, but I'm assuming. I know you're not a huge fan of Shattered Mirror. Is that?
That's a skip it.
That's a skip it. Okay.
I talked about it before. We have so much going on. This is kind of on the other side of the coin, though. We've got so much going on inside and outside of the station. Why are we going to a different universe here? I don't really care about the characters on that side very much. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's, I understand that. And you're long on the record as being a skeptic and not an easy sell for the Mirror Universe stuff. And
Yeah.
I think this is the point in Deep Space Nine where it really starts to feel tired and frustrating as like a diversion. So
Yeah.
hard to argue.
It's tough because I think like Cisco is obviously going to go all protective dad. Like I like that he sticks to his kind of character, and I feel like he would be protective of Jake. But I just don't like it. Skip it. Moving on.
Skip it. Moving on. Let's look at Rejoined as a Dax story. Diving into the Trill. Going back in the previous seasons, you got episodes like Playing God, like Equilibrium, like Facets. There's been a lot explored with the Trill culture and what it's like to be a joined Trill. And Rejoined is certainly an important look at another aspect of that. How do you feel about that story?
It's definitely a see it with all the backstory of just the Dax character. It's definitely a see it for me. I think every Trekkie is like, since the Trill conception of how they have had different hosts and things like that. There's always been that big question of like, well, what if they meet someone that they that type of thing. So I thought it was a good episode. I think it's definitely a see it.
Yeah, I think it lifts the hood in a really interesting way on that joint Trill experience, finds a unique kind of oddball circumstance and explores the challenges that are presented by, those kinds of interactions, previous hosts who had prior intimate relations and how that can cross hairs and create issues. And I think it's a one of the early Star Trek LGBTQ sort of explorations.
Progressive.
Progressive story. I think for the time, especially, it's not as bold and brave as some of the stuff they're doing on Discovery. I think with kind of just taking those kinds of issues on head on. But this is certainly like a sci-fi spin on those ideas, and certainly as somebody who watched it in 1996 felt like it was a bold step and a really brave episode, and up there for me, one of my favorites. Really strong Terry Farrell stuff there. What about let's do Hippocratic Oath. It's an O'Brien Bashir story with a real ethical dilemma. You talked a little bit about Into the Death, like the do we help, do we not? How far do we go with trying to work with these people? I think Hippocratic Oath puts those kinds of decisions onto O'Brien and Bashir and tests their friendship in some really interesting ways. But how do you feel about that
one? Tough watch. I think it's one of those no-win scenarios.
Yeah.
Definitely a see it for me. It's it's got everything. It's got this great story that makes you kind of think. You see both sides of it, and it's also got some great Julian and Miles stuff that you need with the bromance kind of overarching thing.
Yep.
It's one of those things. It's really tough. It's a tough watch, and I think it puts those two in a tough situation.
It does.
Kind of tests a friendship. So I love it. It's a great setup. It's the perfect pairing. Miles, who's been in war, who's fought an enemy like that. When you got Julian though, who's all about just saving lives and wants to be on the edge of space. Where the cutting edge medicine is, and again it besides the ethical dilemma, it also kind of falls into in our own lives, if it's I don't know, I don't want to get too deep, but just even though someone is perceived or is supposed to be your enemy, you still help them. There's some just rules of war types of things, really gritty stuff in this episode. So fantastic.
Yeah, I think they find really interesting ways to take advantage of the friendship on its own, the Brian Bashir friendship. But on top of that, you have a doctor who's got a medical problem in front of him, and you have a soldier, somebody with a military kind of background, and O'Brien with a combat problem in front of him, and they're overlapping. And then they both see different problems, and they know what to do. Like they both know
save
exactly.
His friend too.
Right.
Trying to save lives. Those things.
Yes, they both have their clear training paths forward for how to deal with these kinds of situations, and they do not jive, and they test their friendship, and it's really, I think, good stuff. So I agree with everything you said. What about Starship Down? It's another one of my favorites.
So see it.
Yeah.
Another classic for this season, and Star Trek, I think.
It's full of them.
There's some good. There's some really good submarine-y type things.
Yeah.
There's also some really good character moments. There's some good character moments with Cisco and Kira. Some really good character moments with the guest star alien with Quark. There's just everyone. It feels like everyone has something to do. Worf's in command, I think. He's crawling around the ship and trying to repair. It's just
button heads with lower deck crewmen. Yeah.
And then Miles telling him that he's up, and then the great end scene too. Which there's great end scenes in a lot of these episodes, but I can't keep. You got to keep the lines pretty tight. I love that thing. Or Miles O'Brien. My brain's going like warp 7 right now.
That's all good.
I'm so excited to talk about Deep Space Nine season 4. That's all.
It's loaded with great episodes. Let's hit up Return to Grace, which is a Kira story with Dukat and a controversial one, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, it's controversial. I think it's to see it.
Okay.
I need to see it. I think there's some good comedic moments in it. There's some good, again, backstory stuff in it as well, with Dukat and kind of the occupation and things like that, what happened, and who we saw, and I think it's see it. It's a quiet see.
It is. If you're interested in the Dukat backstory and the layers and textures of his character.
Oh wait, no, I think I might be thinking of a different episode. Return to Grace is the. I think I was.
You are.
Maybe I'm okay.
You are. You're thinking of Indiscretion. They kind of go hand in hand. We should have done.
That's the one I was thinking of. But both of those are see it for me.
Both are see it.
I will talk about Return to Grace.
Okay.
That's because I was thinking about. I guess it's kind of a similar setup.
The Indiscretion's got more comedy in it for sure, with them in the desert and kind of bickering. Return to Grace is a little heavier, I think.
Dukat is kind of a broken man. Like he really misses that the title and having things come with that and being just a kind of a military man. He kind of falls into that trope, but. Indiscretion is the one I was thinking of. I got those switched. That's my bad. But yeah, I'm a firm believer on see it for both. Trying to think of which one would I prefer.
They're both pretty different. I think Indiscretion is more
very different. Yeah.
Yeah. Indiscretion is more of an adventure story. It's a kind of a take on the searchers looking for Dukat's lost daughter with kind of a mystery attached to who is he looking for, why is he here. John Wayne-esque. Some really good location photography. Return to Grace is much more brooding and dark, I think, with Dukat. The reason I kind of mentioned it being controversial is I think a lot of people have mixed feelings on the sort of odd flirtation that almost goes on between those two characters.
I don't think that.
Yeah. Visitor didn't like it, and it was one of the things she kind of wished they could have done differently, from what I've understood from the documentary and from interviews from the past and stuff. And Return to Grace, I think, really leans into some of those things more, which gives it some heft and some dramatic weight, but can put people off as well, I think. What about let's do Our Man Bashir. There's a later.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's a homage to to Bond, which I'm very
Yeah.
fond of. It goes full Bond as you can go without getting a very well-known franchise lawyers involved. So, yeah, it's really good, really good. Definitely a classic as well. This whole season is so loaded.
It is. It is. We're full of see-its, and it's hard to argue with really any of them. I mean, like a lot of these things, your mileage may vary. Maybe you're cooler on The Quickening. Maybe you're cooler on Return to Grace. There are episodes here that I can see people going thumbs down.
Yeah, you could flip a handful of these ones for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I can't argue with thumbs up either. Let's look at Hard Time. We kind of mentioned it earlier as a really heavy, dramatic.
Very dramatic, very tough watch. Challenge it's got this political undertone of, at least for me, I think jail is supposed to be rehabilitative.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a word, big one for me.
Not punitive.
But they don't. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
okay, cool.
Rehabilitative instead of punitive.
Yeah. Yes. It plays with that, but it also tackles some really dark stuff when he gets back. It's just, and we've seen a couple times in Star Trek where a character will get pulled off and lives this type of kind of scenario where he thinks he's, going through this thing, but he actually isn't. But to me, the thing that sells this episode is the things they tackle and the kind of a social commentary on jail stuff and also depression and post-traumatic stress like this. They dive into some really deep,
they really do,
topics. So again, along with The Quickening, those two episodes, not one you're putting on Saturday night just casually.
No.
It's definitely but I think it's a solid episode, and I think it's definitely a pivotal for the Miles O'Brien character. You got to think he's going through ups and downs. Keiko just got back, and man, it's really tough. He's got a kid on the way. It's tough.
It is. Yeah, he's constantly sort of dealt these tough cards throughout the show. Yeah. He's the easy character to kind of beat up on, and I think the meme is O'Brien must suffer. It seems like his episodes tend to deal with him really getting put through the ringer, whether it's Tribunal or Visionary or this. And some episodes that are coming up too, he gets put through the emotional grinder, and I think it's because the actor's so good. Colmini is such a kind of a heavyweight actor, and
so good.
He's so good at playing those kinds of scenes and not overdoing it. Like, he's subtle but really powerful. And the fact that he's a family guy, he's an everyman, makes it easy to like use him for those kinds of stories. So, are you see it on that one?
Yeah, see it. Big time see it.
Okay.
Yep, gotta see it.
Yeah, I think everything you said, I agree with. I won't drag that conversation out because there's a lot to say, but not necessarily here. Let's look at just a couple Cisco episodes here. I know there's one big one at the front of the season that I kind of want to end on, but a Session and For the Cause. Let's talk about those two as like Cisco heavy. The Session being like the Prophet's emissary dynamic. Where do you stand on that one?
It's a see it. Again, I think this is one of those ones that could be easily flipped, but I think when you put it in the line of Cisco kind of emissary, kind of overarching theme that they play with throughout this series, this is like an essential. I think you got to watch it. You got to like, okay, Cisco's okay with kind of stepping back, but then he realizes like, okay, this doesn't seem right, and maybe, I don't know. It's hard because it's like, oh, he did it because he is the emissary. Well, no, I see. It's what's best for Bajor, and I think that is what the emissary kind of is all about. Is what's best for Bajor. So
it's true. Yeah.
Let's see it for me.
Yeah, I think if you're interested in charting the arc again of Cisco's relationship with that role and his kind of evolving position on these things, it's a pretty big step in that path. For the Cause is a very different kind of Cisco episode, dealing with the Maquis and having traitors in his midst. on multiple levels. Lots of subterfuge and twists and turns. What do you think of the?
It's a see it, just because again the twisty turny thing that's just really good. It tackles some stuff that we've seen before, but also I love the it's not a dressing down, but it's kind of like a monologue, like it's a I'm gonna come after you, one of those things. It's yeah.
Eddington.
With Eddington, that ending scene was pretty cool. But yeah, it's just at top of my mind. It kind of poses a question of, Starfleet. If you're a career Starfleet, how often do like personal relationships kind of get involved with your career and your work? And this kind of talks about that, and it kind of explores it, makes it very dramatic. So,
yeah, I think the slow walk toward him realizing and accepting that maybe she's doing it, maybe she's not quite what I thought she was, is really well done here.
Initially, she was like, "What?" He was like, he just like went off. He's like, "What? What evidence? Let me see it right now." It's like,
which is natural. I think that's the way a lot of people would react, and I think that's really well played. It's well written. The way the other characters react to that is natural too, and that like I said, that slow sort of progression toward not being able to deny it anymore is really well done. And there's some really good scenes. There's a great scene with her at the end, and there's a great scene with Eddington at the end. And he's got, like I said, traders on kind of both sides of his life. He's got a personal one, he's got a professional one, and they both kind of sting equally for him. So we're going to end with The Visitor, which is the pretty undisputed kind of champion of the season from most people's perspective. I don't want to speak for everybody out there. It's not a declarative, definitive statement, but I wouldn't be surprised if you polled a wide range of Star Trek fans at a convention which favorite episode of the season that The Visitor would win in a pretty overwhelming way. Would you agree with that? Is it a see it? What are your thoughts?
First of all, bald like a little baby, which is not a bad thing. I'm usually an emotional guy when it comes to things like this. But kind of it hit home because I come from kind of like a single father background. So it just really, really hits home. Just fantastic. Tony Todd is amazing, as always. But it's so good. I don't even know what else to say except to kind of how it resonates with me a little bit. That importance of the father-son dynamic in my life is pretty big. So this is a classic. This is a home run.
Yeah, I think it's Star Trek at its best.
Maybe not one of those Saturday night casual watches, but it's so good though. It's so good. If you need a good cry, just stop.
You got to be ready for the gut punch, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart, and you got to be in the right mood for it. But it's undeniably successful. I think the stuff that it does for Jake's character, and I think the big button on the end of it that makes it like tremendous and gives it real weight is that Cisco knows at the end. It's not just a reset button. Like I think it's very obvious. They don't like tell you directly. Like they don't deliver a captain's log or a Dr. Bashir log entry that says Cisco remembers all. You can see it on Avery Brooks' face when he's sitting in engineering holding Jake. Like he knows what happened, and that I think is what really drives home this episode into like way upper echelon territory. It doesn't undercut that character development and those emotional beats at all. So, is it your favorite episode of the season? Do you have a different favorite episode of the season? Just kind of sum this up here with see it's on everything.
Man, there's some. I would say it's probably my favorite episode of the season. I think there's some really close seconds, some close thirds, and I'm really high on Starship Down, The Way of the Warrior. But yeah, it's really tough because this season is so loaded.
It is
with great. With great
Wide variety too. Everything from
Wide variety. Lots. Yeah.
everything from The Visitor to Our Man Bashir. It's just pretty. To Little Green Men to The Quickening. Like they're pretty extreme. Pretty extreme sides of the spectrum represented here. 23 see-its, 2 skip-its. That's very heavy.
At least on my side, I use green as my see-its, so lots of green.
Me too. Yeah. I think that's clearly the most lopsidedly see-it season you've done so far. I'd have to go back. I don't have like the statistics in front of me. I'm sure we'll look at that down the road as we maybe wrap up Deep Space Nine for you. And just we have graphics to refer back to, and I'm sure when you're done, we'll look at hit rates and things like that for each season. But this is gonna be a tough one to top. There's not a lot of missteps, and even like using your algorithm and your personal system of like some see-its might not be like successful episodes. Even with that in mind, like there's not a whole lot of see-its here that I didn't gather from you didn't have many apologetic see-its. So no storytellers here from what I could gather.
Yep.
And last thing I'll say is I really like doing I'm coming up on this season, and I love doing this kind of on the forefront of me getting to it because it gives me fresh things. Sometimes. No, it gives me things to think about.
What happens at the end of the episode?
I remember. That's the thing. Like the thing I love about it is I feel like I can do this without having rewatched it recently because I feel like I know the episodes pretty well. But what it does do is it allows me to like carry into these episodes some things to like look for and think about and things that I know you took from them, and it gives me some fresh eyes to look at it through. So definitely appreciate it on that level. And I think this was a really fun conversation. It makes me really excited to get to this season and dive into these episodes myself. So any closing thoughts? Or are we going to wrap this up?
I don't think so. I think we should wrap it up.
All right. I'll just say that for those of you who might be listening on the podcast feed, this is a classic example of Trek Live working best as a visual episode. Oh yeah, I forgot. Sorry, guys. No. This is a show that was conceived and designed for YouTube. To be honest, and we had some graphics up on the screen to make it easier to kind of follow us along and bounce around on these episodes and mark them, see it, skip it. So if you're listening, thank you very much. But consider for episodes like this, the YouTube channel, to watch visually if you have the time and the means to do that. But we appreciate you consuming Trek Live in whatever form you choose. Yeah,
I think I will post the full kind of graphic, so you can check that out on Twitter when this episode goes live, and you could have it while you watch, so you can have the graphic while you watch. If you don't want to do the thing, so
sure, we'll make it easy. So this will go live on Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, as our shows typically do, and we hope you enjoy it, and we will hopefully see you soon in our normal capacity in the weeks to come.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.